Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to God's Grace on Thee. Today is Hump Day. It is Wednesday. It is the 9th of April of 2025, and it is now 12:21 p.m. And our temperature is now 67 degrees, sunny, and we're going to get a high of, did that say 87 or was it 78? High of 73. So it's a gorgeous day. No heat, no snow. Today we're going to go through the Phoenix Journal entitled The End of the Masquerade. Let's Pluck the Cuckoo Bird by Diego Hatton from the Phoenix Journals. Let me show you. Chapter 1, Recording Number 1, Hatton. Wednesday, April 17th, 1991, 9:28 a.m., Year 4, Day 244. Wednesday, April 17th. As we walk through this journey together, know that our appreciation is as great in return as that which flows from you, our brethren, from ground crew. There is a little difference in us and you, except that you have not the privilege of far sight and objective perspective. And this is the advantage given to us in working one with another in our task during this time of trial. You to experience and we to give the word. Suffice it to say that which appears so negative is not. The adversary's troops have gotten themselves planet-bound and have lost all ability to create things of positive spiritual growth and are stuck in their mode of destruction. Of course, it is true that if our work is not sufficiently presented, we're caught in their trap with them. So let us ever maintain our intent of truth toward godness, and we shall be fine. And we further must not allow opportunities to be missed. For if we pay attention, the beast gives us opportunity to change in the midst of that which he is setting up for his own use. Education year. How handy of the conspirators to begin to focus on education. Of course, what they will focus on is entirely different from that which we have in mind. It is a blessed opportunity for all of you readers, for each of you is a person, a parent, a child, and some of you are even teachers within the system. So let us make a thrust forward with speakers, sessions, and focus on the Constitution. If they stop your input, then they have to be an admission of their evil plot. The plan on their part is to push the New World Order, the new Constitution, etc. They are now setting you up in America for the kill. This is exactly what they did in the Russians feed the children and youth's minds, is take the country. If you cannot reach the children's minds, then you will lose the race. And if you can't ignite the fire of liberty, Constitution and freedom within the breaths of the late high school years and college students, you can change this thing within weeks. But first, you must touch the parents so they give a damn about their children. For you have been taught to despise your own offspring. Our enemy has caused you to act in manners which overpopulate, create hardship, chaos in the schools, chaos in the home, if homes are even intact. And thus and so. At any rate, please do not allow this opportunity to pass, for you can know that your enemy has structured it to gain maximum results toward more chaos. Dare to have programs of controversial nature. Demand that you offer the youth something of value in your churches. The churches, for goodness sake, are the one thing wherein you should have control. If you can't stand against a minister preaching lies, then where's the hope for your world? Or do you prefer to donate a tithe while the preacher lulls you into hell? Can you do it? Of course you can. Right in this bigoted little village just this week, a Green Beret military man gave a patriotic military speech to the community in high school. And it wasn't what Colonel Grits would give, for it was pro-war and aggression. But how could they resist Colonel Grits on publicity grounds? You will never receive a more patriotic, country-oriented speech than you will get from James Grits, in truth, of exactly how it is, for the man does not speak on idealistic hearsay. He only speaks of that which he has experienced. In this manner, truth is not questioned. This is an opportunity of opportunities to plant the seeds for the fall harvest. And that's what President Trump has started right now. Change our educational system. I must remind you that there is no apparent concern on the part of the government over the lack of income tax payers, and the money continues to flow out like a water from a broken dam. So, know that they have money plans up their sleeves, and it bodes ill wind for you ones. The only thing between you and loss of your nation is the lack of arms control. And they still don't have your weapons, but they are very, very close. My dear friends, you are all but tied in the sack and ready for the roaster. I'm going to quote some headlines now and then shock you, I hope. The Zionists digging the U.S. grave. The U.S. will emerge a defeated and degraded nation in a Middle East war, fighting as ally of Zionists to help thieves hold onto Palestine plunder. And didn't I just tell you that in the last video? Number 2, the Talmudic law rules USA. Civil rights are not civil rights, but social rights, and not amenable to legislation. The U.S. Supreme Court, 1897. Number 3, the U.S. on brink of senseless bloodbath. Negro victims of false leaders directed by communists and Zionists. America stands alone and hated in the world. Number 4, blueprint for national suicide. Number 5, the Zionist leaders conspired to railroad United States into a third world war. Aren't we seeing that right now? And number 6, don't give up your right to keep and bear arms. Gun control will be final move before the takeover. And Robert Kennedy died for Israel. Okay, now, when do you think these were written? Anyone? Well, the first one was written on Thursday. It was April 1st of 1965, so it wasn't that far away. The second one was dated March 1970. The third was dated March 15th of 1965. The fourth one was dated January of 1968. The fifth was February of 1966. And the sixth was July 1968. Now, I give this as a sampling to let you know that they were in the pits over 2 decades ago. So don't you think it's time to pay closer attention? Since this is being written specifically as an express, I will take the opportunity to respond to a very lengthy inquiry from one of our friends who asked about the secret kosher food tax and if it was true. Indeed, it is true, and I will outline a bit of the information regarding the coding. So here's the code on kosher products. The public is all but totally unaware that this tax exists. All food products marked with K or U have been taxed by the Jewish rabbis. Now, on every pantry shelf in America lie dozens of canned and packaged food products which have a small K or a small U within a circle, and it's printed on the label. Now, this symbol informs the Orthodox Jews that the items have been checked by a rabbi to make sure that they have been prepared in accordance with kashrut rules as set out in the Jewish Talmud. Now, this means that the food does not contain a mixture of meat and dairy products and no pork or shellfish. American food products already are checked by local and federal governmental agencies for purity and edibility. No. Jewish certification that they are kosher in no way makes the product any more wholesome to Christians or to Jews, for that matter. But millions of dollars are paid for kosher approval. The huge manufacturers of processed food products in America have long kept a tight lid of secrecy on how much money they pay for kosher approval. Now, this subject is so sensitive that no media outlets dare even bring up this question before its readers. Because the truth, however, is that untold millions are paid to Jewish Orthodox organizations for this totally absurd kosher certification. The first group is Rabbi Bernard Levi's Committee for the Furtherance of Torah Observance, which issues the K insignia. The other group is the Union of Orthodox Jewish Congregations of America. Now remember that the term Jewish is also a code indicated elite followers of the Talmud protocols and not the Torah or any religious books of the Hebrews. In 1975, the New York Times, a Jewish-owned newspaper, did publish information in a rare article on the subject. Now, the article states that the food companies advertise extensively in Jewish publications informing Jews that their products have been kosher approved. And such ads are never run in general publications. The Times says that the symbols on the products are printed unobtrusively on labels, which intentionally go unnoticed by the general public. That's something that you kids can watch out for now. Now, companies must pay huge sums to the rabbinical organizations for the right to use the endorsement. And at the same time, this cost is passed immediately to you in the form of higher food prices. And you, who are not Jews, are kept ignorant of this information and tax. Now, this excludes items such as Oreo cookies and Jell-O and all sorts of totally non-Jewish traditional food products, right? Funny thing is that the non-Zionists, Jews, are the only ones who have raised objection, and they raised a loud voice against this practice. There are only around 600,000 Orthodox Zionists, or not Orthodox, Jews in America, out of some 12 million Jews. Therefore, the Jews have objected to this total unnecessary rip-off of the American consumer, which includes the Jewish American. It is referred to in the Jewish circles as the kosher food racket. So this label marking goes way back to 1919, when Joseph Jacobs set up the Joseph Jacobs Organization, Inc. As you might assume, it became a multi-million-dollar operation. When $1 million was a gigantic sum, right? The racket worked too well that the organized rabbinical organizations took it over from Jacobs in 1925 and went from the New York area to national distribution. And at that point, they stopped spending money on advertising and they kept the entire payoff for themselves. Now, as time passed, it has become an open blackmail scheme, and by year 1960, there were 225 some odd companies paying the Jewish kosher tax. And by 1966, the number increased to 475. Some Then in 75, it grew to 700, and so on. So over 300 rabbis are now at work for the two Orthodox organizations, going around extracting huge fees for their kosher stamp of approval. Now, you know Doge can't interfere with that. So, would you, general readers, recognize any of the companies? Indeed. General Foods, Mueller's, Delmonico Foods, Hunt Wesson Foods, Inc., Procter & Gamble Company, General Food Kit, Morton Salt Company, the Nestle Company, Lever Brothers Company, Nabisco, etc. Now, of course, you also have to realize that most of these named companies are now facade corporations functioning under huge banker cartel conglomerates. But you end up with this tax on foods such as Barton's Candies, Kraft Products, All Heinz Foods, Hunt's Foods, Maxwell House, Starkist, Kellogg's Post Cereals, Bird's Eye Products, Gaines Dog Food, and yet I wonder why the dog needs kosher food. Kool-Aid, Colgate Palmolive, General Foods, Claps Baby Foods, and on and on. And I have not time nor the inclination to scan any further. And I will say that you American taxpayers are hit two ways by this vicious blackmail racket. I thank Donna B. for sharing this information and clipping from an April issue of a national news press release. Boston, the AP Vice President Dan Quayle said he must have misspoken when he described the Persian Gulf War as a victory for the forces of aggression. Now, Quayle was praising the United States war effort when he made the verbal slip. Well, during a speech yesterday to the American Society of Newspaper Editors. Now, reflecting on the war's outcome, Quayle said it was a stirring victory for the forces of aggression against lawlessness. So be it. He knew. The bloodbath. The bloodbath. Dear ones, if you're not sickened by that which has been Bush-triggered in the Middle East, then I'm not sure we have any meeting ground. Now, Bush had to stop the invasion of Iraq because the Soviets threatened to intervene unless he halted the American advance. So at this point, the whole area has collapsed into chaos and a bloodbath triggered by Bush's own urging of an uprising against Saddam Hussein. We all witnessed that. This is time. And this time, all of your observers agree, regardless of that which they tell you, those poor refugees were so taunted and worked up and terrified for their lives by the terrorists in their midst telling them and showing examples of that which Saddam would do to them, that you now have these millions on death marches, running to the unknown from something which does not and never did exist as danger to them. Come on, American. What of those terrible stories about Kuwait at the hands of the Iraqis? Well, dear ones, Iraq annexed as of the 19th province, Kuwait. Do you really totally destroy and kill off your own workers? Your own military air force dropped napalm on most of those oil wells, which are spewing the pollution about the lands. How much will you accept? Well, it certainly appears to be limitless. Worse, you're now going to foot the bill for even more firefighters because the fires continue to burn and your own multi-billion-dollar extinguishers are failing, when all it would take is one very small air fuel cell per well and instantly all are poofed out. Don't you weary on the lies that are dumped on you, that are dumped on your intelligence? I want to leave that mess alone for a minute because that which is going on while you are distracted against the Palestinians is incredibly beyond your imaginings. Innocent civilians in Kuwait. Now, Operation Desert Storm is technically over, and a few American troops are drizzling home and being pulled out of Iraq and Kuwait. But the killing, the nightmare carnage in Kuwait continues, although it's now being prevented by the Kuwaitis themselves on the local Palestinian population. So the stated purpose of involving some 540,000 of the U.S. troops in battle with Iraq was to free the tiny Arab sheikdom of Kuwait, and it annexed late August by the Iraqi strongman Saddam Hussein, and to restore the emir to his throne. So, following the current ceasefire, horrifying scenes of terribly tortured and wantonly murdered Kuwaitis have filled American television screens, inflaming the senses of the American people against Hussein's inhuman brutality. But it now turns out that some of the worst atrocities, such as the killing of Kuwaiti babies to steal their incubators, were proven to be fake. However, the American people are not seeing the heinous horrors now taking place in Kuwait under the direction of the Khazarian Mossad through the Kuwaitis, while the Americans still in Kuwait are forced to stand by and allow the atrocities to proceed. The new murderers. Before the eyes of the U.S. troops, Palestinians, who make up about 1/3 of Kuwait's population, are now being hunted down and deported or detained by Kuwaiti armed forces, secret police, and still intact civilian resistance to the Iraqi occupation. Now, thousands of Palestinians and Egyptians, Iraqis, Jordanians, and other Arab people, many of whom were born in Kuwait, are being dumped by the busload over the border into the no man's land of southern Iraq. Penniless, without food, water, or identification papers. Now, the American soldiers reported on March 5th that they came across the bodies of 4 Palestinian males, each of whom had been shot in the head and emasculated. However, your U.S. military command insists there is actually no problem, and all that will be cleared up. And doctors are reporting hundreds of cases of horrible mutilations among the Palestinian population. And among those Palestinians brought to one hospital were 6 men shot execution style with a bullet in the head. The same group within Kuwait now described the killings of the Palestinians as worse and more brutal than they described prior to the invasion. So what will happen to those in the Iraqi territory? And there is one refugee camp that's located about a mile inside of Iraq, where more than 600 deportees are receiving only shelter beneath the plastic that's given them by the American troops for the ready-to-eat meal containers. They've had to live solely upon the generosity of passing American troops. But the Americans are now ordered out. Please, in the name of God Almighty, wake up, people. Can you not see your plight? And equally as bad as for those Palestinians are the ones still in Palestine. They're still under martial law at the hands of the Khazar elite. Not able to come out or work or even live. And the Shamir answers the inquiries regarding occupation land building for Jews as necessary, and plans are to continue, for our mission is to develop these lands. America, you're next. So what of Russia's help to the coalition? Well, the facts are and are now coming public. So what of Russia's help to the coalition? Well, the facts are and they're now becoming public, that it simply is not as presented to you. So are you surprised? Remember fake news? The Bush administration and the establishment news media marching in the usual lockstep during the Persian Gulf War portrayed to the American people the great importance of Soviet involvement in the conflict, which was BS. It is true that there was Soviet involvement and that its impact was significant, but not, however, in the manner that the American people have been told. So while the Bush administration has portrayed the Soviets as helping to bond together the so-called multinational coalition facing the forces of Iraq's Saddam Hussein, the truth is that the Soviets were heavily supporting the Iraqis before and during the battle. And in addition to supplying material and military advisors throughout the conflict, the Soviets were allowed by the Iraqi to share sophisticated U.S. technology obtained from captured U.S. weapons when Kuwait was invaded and annexed by Iraq. In addition, now French intelligence sources reveal openly that the Soviet military personnel actually served in forward battlefield positions with the Iraqis. To create the image of Soviet cooperation with the U.S. forces, it was leaked to the U.S. media that the KGB had provided the CIA with considerable detailed information about Iraq's Soviet-built arsenal of weapons. However, in the middle of this cover-up, it's now discovered that most information regarding the arsenal of weaponry, mostly from Russia, was deliberately delivered by Soviet military officers who defected last November and have mysteriously gone home again. You see, and Schwarzkopf was told, or has told as much on open television. And I told you a year ago, this particular little war was planned well over 2 years ago. So funny thing about these little wars. The truth usually unfolds because the world accepts. Apparently, America's getting nervous. The French intercepted Russia radio broadcasts from some 150 Soviet military advisors who remained in Iraq. They operated the electronic listening posts and received the satellite reconnaissance focused in the area. And the fact is that the Soviet military advisors and technical people, they never left Iraq. So now you think this New World Order of the Khazar Zionist cartel is a good idea? I suggest you better look again. All you did in this war was give the Khazars a good foothold to manipulate you, and that is proven by the very fact that all your dealings since the so-called ceasefire have been to keep Baker in Israel with Shamir and the other terrorists such as Assad, etc. And I would be very nervous if I were you, for guess what they have planned for those empty military bases which are being closed. What will you do with so many military men and women back in an already bankrupt workforce? The insurance industry is collapsing. Now, the banks, except for the master cartel, are collapsing as well. The S&Ls have collapsed, your nation is bankrupt, and the house of cards is the whirlwind. Your Constitution is totally disregarded by the very men you elected to protect you. And you lock the foxes inside the henhouse. You have turned government into a democracy controlled by voting numbers into your enemy's hands. And your own president has openly stated to you that you are now a democracy and no longer a republic. And that means government by the majority vote of Congress, and the majority of Congress is totally and absolutely controlled by the Zionist elite. So everything from here on in will be controlled through EOs, executive orders. And emergency regulations, just as was set up so conveniently by the war. So at worst, they no longer bother to hide the fact that from you, except in the most slipshod manner. They're They're so sure of themselves, dear ones, that they simply laugh at you and continue to dump the pornography upon you and call you bigots if you object. And soon you will not object. I repeat something I told you long ago. You are expendable. You will be suspended, except for those who can serve the new kings. And once you allow the total loss of your constitution, you're dead. And if you don't believe that you are vulnerable and that the enemy is on your own doorsteps, how about just a little comfort zone surprise for you? On April the 3rd of 1991, your own military officials had to admit under inquiry that an MiG intruder fighter bomber was over Florida, undetected by radar or any other means. Now, no interceptors were scrambled to even check out the MiG-23. It was flown by a Cuban pilot, and worse, lower personnel at Key West were unaware of the foreign fighter until it circled the field several times. Dear ones, that particular MiG-23 is nuclear weapon capable. Funny thing about this is that this incident occurred and you readers were told about it when it happened on March the 20th. Comforting to know that not only do these things happen, but you are not informed. And even the incident goes into that deep freeze, right? For weeks. So good luck, America. Not to worry though, America. For your readers are right on top of things and ready to stand up for America and the Constitution. As shown by your own wondrous Colin Powell to be guest of honor and receive accolades for his service to unification of America-Israeli brotherhood. His appearance was the highlight of the 3-day conference in Washington of the American-Israel Public Affairs Committee. Even many conferees even had tears in their eyes as they watched a 10-minute film that was made by the American-Israeli Public Affairs Committee office in Israel showing the Iraqi missiles attacks and the arrival of the U.S. Patriot anti-missile batteries. Dharma, it is long past lunchtime, we need a break. Then I wish to discuss a few more points regarding robotoids, for I seem to have stirred up the hornets. And you will note, however, that you now have first-hand information from one who is on the inside and knows the CIA very, very well. And you got information, precious. Even more so, you learned that the replications coming out of Japan are even more superbly crafted than those coming prior to now. Please note the newly coming co-ventures and meetings with Gorbachev of Japan's top people in Japan. Also note that within the week, Gorbachev requested $500 million in additional food credits from you, America, and got it. That means that all the prior is used up and now the flow will be quite steady. So pray for a good grain of crop this year, chelas, for all your reserves are gone. So be it. Let us take a rest, please. Thank you. I ask that efforts get Operation Sandstorm to the printers and be kept high on the list of the to-dos. I also request that Druthea's transmission from Isu Sananda be gotten into an express, and perhaps someone can work a bit on possibilities of utilizing the education thrust as mentioned. Hat on to clear for this session. So, interesting piece of history that is necessary to understand who and how and why, right? Okay, folks, that's what I have for you today on the Phoenix Journals, and with the new book, The End of the Masquerade, let's pluck the cuckoo bird. Okay, be sure and share your smile. Hug those you love, because life is too short. And do something really kind for someone, because after all, we're all God's children. Love you, see you, bye.